Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm very excited that we're going to see Tom Scoon, and actually he's joined by his son Gavin today, who's going to do the filming. So it's great when the families are together helping out. I've actually known Tom and represented him since the early 90s, which is pretty hard for me to believe. And I was always fascinated as well that his work, which is made out of such cold materials, glass and granite, had such a warmth to it that the fact that the work, I guess it's the subject matter, the work is about family, about relationships, and it's very, very generational. When I purchased some work by Tom, I was thinking of buying 2 pieces. But then I have 3 sons, and I was really drawn to have 3 pieces. It's it is the fact that you can really relate to the work. I find it full of warmth, and it brings back a lot of memories when I see the pieces over the years. Family things, very generational. Tom uses stone, which is indigenous to New Hampshire. And it always amazed me as well that basically he doesn't touch the stone, rather than maybe chipping away, carving out a nose or slightly shaping it. The stone is as he finds it. And maybe the stone comes alive. There is some quartz and other materials that vein through the stone, and it does give it a real life. So today we're going to let people ask questions. If you want to hit the chat button, we'll do this during the tour. If you want to hit the chat button and write in a question, or hit the hand, and when the time is right, Daniel will open it up so you can ask a question. That would be terrific. We will still do the Q&A at the end of the video as well. And it is my pleasure now to introduce you to Tom Scoon and to his son Gavin in his studio in New Hampshire. So Tom, hello. I know you're there somewhere. There you are.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hi,
Thank you for having us.
Welcome, and thank you for...
We have a big crowd coming to see you.
Great. Well, thank you for spending time to want to learn a little more about my process and my work. I'm here in Northwood, New Hampshire, just giving you a sense of where we are. It's southeastern New Hampshire. I'm about an hour and a half from Boston. The amazing Portsmouth seacoast town is a half an hour to the east, and then the capital is half an hour to the west. We have about 5,000 people that live here. I have 2 acres of heavy woods with multiple buildings, and my studio is about 3,000 square feet. So there's a lot to see, and we're going to kind of try to move through it pretty quickly. But as Sandra said, if you have questions, please ask. So I'm going to give you a little background with how I got here. Early 80s, I was living in Illinois doing ceramics and stained glass. I became exposed to some glass blowing. Fortunately, at that point, Illinois State University was very close. Joel Philip Myers was the professor, incredible glass program, glass blowing program. In 1983, I decided to enroll there and work with Joel. Never picked up a glass blowing pipe, so I was a novice at that point, but was doing a lot of art. So I was there from 1983 to 1988. I got a BFA in 1988. So as everybody who gets in glass is always enamored with glass blowing. So I started blowing the first 2 or 3 years, was always interested in sculpture. So I was always, at later point was mixed medias, working in bronze, wood, and found some stone. So I have actually 3 archival pieces from that period here. So I was actually making these figurative blown element pieces, and really it's kind of interesting that I've done these now, that it's really not too far off what I'm doing now. These figures, very, that are grouped together. So these were made in, say, like 83, 84. They started moving towards figurative pieces blown and sand casted. So you can see actually they were becoming more organic and really moving towards stone. And then here is one of the first stone and glass pieces. This is probably about 1985. So we're talking about 35 years ago that this was one of the first pieces, and kind of amazing. I was able to find stone in the farmlands of central Illinois, which there really isn't a lot of stone there. So 1988, looking for a graduate program. I could probably get into any program around the country. There's not a lot at that time for graduate school. Came out to Boston, Massachusetts College of Fine Arts. One of the real reasons for that was that it was geologically correct. Obviously, I was kind of more concerned about an environment that there was stone that I could work with. So 88 to 90, MFA in Boston. Spent 90, 91 just working jobs to get some money together to build a studio. Rented a space on the Rhode Island line. I was actually commuting from Boston to Pawtucket for a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot space with a friend who was a tech at RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, and was there from 91 to 96. And so living the dream. I was working 3 days a week, high-end cabinet shops, other artists, and then I would go down, and the other 3 days a week would be in the studio in Rhode Island line. And probably in, as Sandra said, 92, 93, my phone rang, and Sandra Ainsley was on the line and wanted to represent me. And, you know, there's a handful of people in life that help me get to this point. And Sandra is one of those people, and just the integrity and passion that Sandra and Daniel has is amazing, and it's very rare and unique. So it's just a blessing and a joy to have a relationship and work with them.
Thank
So,
you, Tom.
96, I find a property in New Hampshire here. So I have 2 acres of heavy woods. Daniel, there's a couple videos that we're going to run that show the property. There's 2 of them. So Daniel, you want to run the first one, and I could talk about that a little bit. So the first building on the property is a 1,000 square foot photography building, 14-foot ceilings, natural light, wood floors. This building was existing when I bought. Actually, a photographer built the property, so it was his photography studio, and now it's my studio. Then we come up to a timber frame house, and I have extensive gardens behind it. So when I bought it, the right-hand side was existing, and the left-hand side I built. It's 18 by 24. We're not there yet, but we're coming up the side of the house. This is gardens behind it. So then it's long and the property is long and narrow. I have a lot of buildings on a piece of property, and it all fits in well. So this is the side of my house. And then we're going to come around to the front. That's my studio down in front of you right now.
Beautiful property, Tom.
It is. It's very unique and very fortunate. When I was in Boston looking for properties, you just could not afford a house and buildings at that time. So this is a timber frame post and beam. As I say, the right was existing. And probably about 15 years ago, I built the left with a friend, 18 by 24. And now we come down to my studio, and I have 3,000 square feet on 2 floors. So this is where we're standing right now with the doors that are open. And then there's a lean-to with storage and my bobcat in it. We'll visit that later. So then there's a second video that Daniel can run next. So here we are. So when I bought the property, this where I'm walking right now was all trees. I cut down about 100 trees, cut a road in, and there's a full basement in the space, but when I bought it, you could not access it. So this is a bunch of granite that's I use that's out along the roadway or driveway for sculpture. So we're gonna turn and you'll see the basement area then where all the equipment is. And that's where we'll head after here. So second floor, the basement area, which is amazing, 10-foot high ceilings, water power, heat, floor drains. So then I back up to a beaver pond, and we're getting close to the end of the property here. So nestled in the woods, probably about 8 to 10 years ago, built a 16 by 16 foot cabin. It looks out on the beaver pond. It's just a great place to read, write, think, or drink. So
I like all those things.
yes, it's just a great space and just to contemplate and be out in nature. So we'll turn around and you'll see then the cabin. So this is where, you know, my life is.
Well, I think you're a lucky man. You're the first artist we visited, Tom, where I can hear the birds chirping.
Oh, great.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we had a moose, bear, huge snapping turtles, just everything that's come through the property through the years.
Beautiful.
So we're here up in the half of the upper space. So this space is basically sandblasting. I'll do a lot of finish work here, foam injection machine, and it's just a space for me to kind of be putting pieces together and pack in here. So it's just a general kind of area that kind of everything kind of comes together in. So at this point, we're going to go downstairs and we'll do a quick tour of the basement, and then I'm going to do a demo to try to show you how the pieces are made.
Okay, thank you. Those crystals are beautiful, Tom.
They are nice grouping, yes.
Yeah, beautiful grouping.
So here we are in the basement space. This was, you know, the only way you could get into the space was through this stairway when I bought it. So as I said, cut a bunch of trees down, excavated this area out and saw this wall out so you can make a drive-in. So able to come in, the cabin's down there. So I have a bronze furnace, which is very unique to have a bronze furnace in your studio. I can melt 100 pounds of metal. A number of large kilns. These are all custom built. So I build all these kilns. You know, you could buy something like this, but it's probably, you know, $10,000 or $15,000. So you get, you know, material, a couple $1,000 of material, and you spend a couple weeks and you build this. So a lot of people really don't know how to make equipment anymore, and they just order it. But everything in here is basically custom built by me. So have a number of large slumpers here. So there's 4 of them. These larger ones are for like base pieces of large scale pieces. And then there's a couple smaller kilns. So these are more for shoulders and mid-sized bases. This kiln is on right now. It's just fired a kiln on yesterday, so it's at like 950 degrees, and it's slowly cooling and annealing. And we'll talk about that process a little bit. A crazy contraption. This is a steamer. Steams wax out of molds, generates, put water in it, water heater out, and it generates steam, and you can steam the wax out of molds. Here's a front loader. This is actually, there's glass in here from yesterday. So what happens is that this kiln is at like 1,000 degrees. And this glass is still warm from yesterday. So it'll be at 1,000. Kilns at 1,650. You come in with a pair of tongs, you pick it up, and you drop it into the molds. So you can add glass as the fire. You can't take a piece of cold glass and put it in a hot kiln that explode. So this is a kind of a preheat oven to cast the pieces out with. A mold room, so everything I make is in plaster molds. So there's a positive in clay and wax. So you come in here, and this is where I make the molds. And it's a dirty room, exhausted. It's not the best thing to breathe, and you know, silicosis will probably get me in the end, unfortunately. So a couple diamond saws, some saws glass, but there's one upstairs, so it's a water feed saw. We're going to use this to try to make a head. And then there's MIG and TIG welding to weld bronze and steel, so welding area. So here I have a piece set up. So with my work, everything is a component system, and I make my work myself, so that's the reason why I can make large scale pieces and literally ship them anywhere in the world. Basically the head, shoulder, pin, component system, torso stone, notch, and then the glass base. So everything can be put together by one person and shipped anywhere in the world. So what happens is everything starts with the torso stone. Every piece of mine, this is how the work starts. And what I'll do is find a larger scale stone. So here's a natural stone, could be a torso stone. You go to the diamond saw and you start sawing out this area for the notching and saw the shoulder out. So this is a potential torso stone. So basically, end up with this form here. So what happens is everything is made in either clay or wax. The bases are always made in clay. So what happens is, well, it's a clay, start building up clay and make this form. Oh, I thought I was so prepped. I need a tool. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So what happens to make this form? You dig out an area. And then fit the torso stone to it. As you can see, everything gets fit. So this would take a day or so to make this form and fit it all completely. Cut the clay away. And do all this custom fitting so everything fits perfectly, but you get the sense of what's happening here.
Wow.
Right? So this is how basically a base is created. So then everything is textured with actually real stones. I'll come in, cut in lines, and then come in and texture this clay with small stones to give it a organic stone-like quality to the clay piece. So this then clay torso stone's removed, and the clay goes into the mold room, and I invest the mold around it. So with the work, positive is the clay, invested in a mold, and then you dig the clay out, and you have the negative of that shape in a mold, and then you put it in a kiln and fire glass into it. So Daniel has a couple of videos that we're going to run of showing how a mold is made. So Dan, you want to run the first one? So here are two bases that are made, and I'm going to put mold boards around it. So there's an exhaust. There's exhaust going on, so there's noise in the background. But as you can see, I'm going to build a box around these molds. Nope. We have the box made around the clays. So now we're going to run another video, a second one of actually making a mold. So I've changed molds and now they're actually just creating a wax, but basically it's the same thing. It just was a quicker video instead of showing the one that we did. So a mold is basically 50% plaster, 50% silica. You get a half a bucket of water, and with that you get a full bucket of plaster. So here we are, putting in silica and plaster into the water. Mix the plastic. Then pour that plastic into that box, press either the clay or the wax, so it's totally contained inside the plastic. All right, so basically you've seen how a mold is made. And then what would happen is I take those boards apart, and you have a plaster mold that either has a clay in it or will have a wax in it. And then that would go into a kiln. So basically we have a chunk of plaster, we flip the mold over, and all you see then at the top is this clay area. Take a knife, dig the clay out, and you have the negative of that shape in a mold. It goes in the kiln. You put cold glass in here, you bring it up to 1650, that glass melts, you add it, and then it fills, and you have that form cast in glass, and then it slowly has to anneal. So break the mold apart if everything is okay. And you can talk about that in a little bit. We're at this point here now, right? So what happens at this point is that I have a number of these fryers here, Westinghouse fryers that has wax in it, that have it at a temperature. You can just take it out and start manipulating it. And get the stone wet so it doesn't stick to it. And then start
building.
Add to the shoulder here, or add to the torso stone to create the shoulder.
Tom, Tom,
yes?
we have a question from Demetra. She's interested in knowing how long a piece this size will anneal for.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. So depending on scale, this type of piece will be in the kiln for almost 2 weeks from the whole cycle. So Put the mold in the kiln. It takes a day, 24 hours to dry the mold out and come up to 1,000. At that point, it takes like 5 or 6 hours for the kiln to come from 1,000 to 1,650 to get ready to put the glass in. And then it takes 5 or 6 hours to add that glass to fill the mold up. Then this would be in the kiln for probably about 150 hours after that, slowly annealing. The most crucial time is from 1,000 to 700 degrees. So large scale pieces, large busts, those pieces could be in the kiln for almost a month, the whole cycle. It's over like 400 hours to slowly anneal or cool those pieces. And we can talk a little bit more about that. So we've created the wax shoulder. So now, you know, the most challenging part of the work and aesthetically, you know, what makes the pieces is a head. And I've, you know, back in the day, I would have to find the heads and they have to work on a number of different levels. Aesthetically, I mean, are they interesting? The color, and formally, you know, size and scale. So heads are created, and it's kind of a very difficult process to make a head and make it work with a piece. So just to give you a sense, we're going to see if this works or not. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But, you know, here are two stones, smaller stones that are potentially heads. Look for a shape that kind of, it goes back, it cleaves back on the back side. It has an area that'll drill a hole or create a chin. So as you can see here, possible head, eye area, nose. So I've learned how to see these shapes. So what happens is, I'll take a Fran, make a mark where I want to try to cut it, and I'm going to try to break this area out. So we're going to try to make a head. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I've learned at this point, it's almost like a Zen thing that you can't really worry about it too much. I'll be working on pieces and try to make 8, 9 different stones and heads, and you walk away, come back, you pick up a stone, you make a saw, a break, and it just comes out and it's perfect. So you come to the diamond saw, I'll saw this little area out. So as you can see, I've just sawed a notch in here. Right? You come to this pair of old jeans with sand in them, put it down on the bottom side. Chisel, hammer, chisel, a couple different ones. And this is a new stone, and it's actually much harder and denser, and it's kind of very difficult for how it breaks. So it's very, you just never sure how it's going to break. So come take the chisel. And it broke out halfway decent, you know, lost some in here, but what will happen anyways is I'll saw out an area for the chin and then drill a hole. So as you can see how, you know, this stone has almost become a pretty decent head. So it's then, you know, going through this process of figuring out what head fits on what piece. When I'm making work, I'll be making this scale piece. There'll be probably 6 pieces being made at a time because I can get probably 6 in a kiln. Larger ones, there'll be 3 at a time. Large scale buses, I'll make 2 at a time. So we've created the head, we've drilled a hole, we do all our fitting, and then we come back with the stones and texture the wax. Then that basically goes to a sprue system, and it gets invested in a plaster mold that we saw before. It gets steamed out, and then I have a number of chain hoists. So I'll chain hoist the molds in the kiln. Some molds can weigh up to 300-400 pounds. I do everything myself, so chain hoist them in. So Daniel has a short video about me talking about a kiln. So there's actually voice there, so we'll just see a hot kiln then being cast out. Not that, Daniel? Daniel? Daniel, skip that one, and the next one with me by the kiln.
Kiln that's at a casting temperature of 1650 degrees. There's 2 large-scale thighs for a seated figure in here. I loaded the molds about 2 days ago. It takes about 20 hours to come to 1,000 degrees, and then you tell a computer to have the kiln come as fast as it can from 1,000 to 1,650 degrees. So that hit temp this morning, and this has been up now about 10 to 12 hours. The pieces are almost cast out right now. This was a lost wax casting. The pieces are almost cast out. I'll turn the kiln off and have it go to 1,000 degrees. And from there, it'll start annealing or slowly cooling from 1,000 to 0, which could take about 2 weeks. Basically, it's a big custom-made kiln, and it likes electricity.
Tom, this is definitely unique to you, this whole technique.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
So casting glass, we can talk a little bit about, finances and what it takes. Good casting glass is incredibly expensive and difficult to get now. One that actually melts and doesn't devitrify. You can have a number of issues that happen. So here's a Blanco crystal. Here's a new lead crystal that actually I bought about 3,500 pounds from Steve Weinberg. He was closing up part of his studio, and I purchased this, and this is what's in the new Aurora pieces. And then an ingot of a blue that actually I produced out of a furnace that I had here. So casting glass costs up to $20, $25 a pound. Large scale pieces can have up to 100 pounds plus. So that's, glass is close to $2,000 on a large scale piece. Mold material, wax, electric bills are substantial, especially when you're annealing pieces for 3 or 4 weeks. And then the bigger issue is that when you're casting glass, there's no guarantees that it's going to come out. So there can be a number of issues. I've been doing it for now, 25, 30 years, and it's just the nature of the beast. Here's a piece. Unfortunately, lost wax casting, a shoulder. So the piece did not cast out all the way. So it's missing the back side. So something like that happens, you basically throw it away, you start all over. Here's a piece that actually was just something recent. The mold failed. So what happened was it's in the kiln like this. The mold cracked. Glass started coming out the sides and coming out of the bottom of the kiln and lost 3 or 4 inches off the base, so it's too short. Or you can have a large scale piece in the kiln for the month. You open it up, there's a crack running through it, and basically you throw it all away and you start all over. Does that happen often? No, but it does happen. At this point in life, there's probably 10% loss, but when that happens, that's a bad day. So we've kind of seen the process, of how the pieces are made, creating a head, equipment. Is there any questions at this point for down here that anybody would like to ask?
Yeah, Tom, I have a question from Sonia. Sonia's asking, when you create the pieces, are you creating men and women, or do you leave that up to the viewer, the client of the work to determine, the sex of each piece?
As I say, I'm usually, creating 5 or 6 pieces at a time, and I'm not trying to exert my will over the stones, and I let everything happen organically. So once the pieces kind of come together, then I'll start grouping them, and that dynamic naturally takes place. So, I think typically when you're working at pieces, it can be kind of the feeling can be there in the gesture, the shape, the form of the pieces, which one's masculine, which one's feminine, and the dynamic that's happening between those. I'll make choices when I'm starting to group them that will help make that happen.
They do have their own personalities.
we'll talk about this upstairs, but yes, every
Okay.
stone is unique, so every piece is unique.
And Tom, we have a question from Ellen. Ellen, I'm going to open the mic for you. All you have to do is click unmute and you can ask Tom your question. Ellen, you just want to unmute yourself. Okay, Tom, what we'll do is we'll go back to Ellen a little later. Ellen, if you want to type your question in using either the chat or the Q&A, you're welcome to.
Okay, so
Thank
why
you.
don't we head upstairs and we'll look at the rest
Yes.
of the studio, unless the question came through?
It has not come through yet, but I'll let you know.
Okay, so we're gonna go upstairs, look at the rest of the studio, and then we'll start looking at work then.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thanks.
So here we are in the cold working and grinding room. When I bought the property, they actually raised German Shepherds in this building. So this was a kennel room, fiberglass floors, floor drains. It has tree runs out here, ripped that all out, put the window in. So incredibly unique to be able to have a room that you can do wet work in and floor drains and wash it all away. So basically it's very simple. A belt sander that you kind of sand edges with. This is a big lapping wheel that spins around with grit, and this is what you grind the bases of the bus pieces so you can stand straight when they come out of the kiln. They're not level or flat, so this will grind the pieces straight. Water feed diamond core drill press, so basically diamond drill bits that you can drill in glass and stone that has a water feed. Another diamond saw, this is more for stone instead of glass. And then there's a lot of tooling that use water and diamond tooling to grind the glass and fit the torso stone or shoulders, because there could be flashing, screw areas that have to be removed, so everything kind of fits back perfect. And that's something that's really important to me, is that custom fit, how everything is seamless and it fits together, and that transition is, it's like as one. So just a very simple stoneworking and glassworking area. So this is the last space I built probably 7 or 8 years ago. I put up a lean-to 25 foot by 25 foot. It was more to keep my bobcat happy in the winter, starts better. I know you guys in Toronto, you have snow too, so.
I thought you were going to say you knew we liked vodka.
So just for my bobcat, but then it also helps in the winter that I'm able to bring in work for the stone in to work for the winter. Prior to this space, I would be tarping pallets of stone outside and then trying to work through those with a couple feet of snow on it. So now I can bring in 4 or 5 pallets of rock, and this is just some great granite. We're going to run a quick video in a minute of a quarry, but so I'll go out and find forms that can be heads and torso stones. I've learned over time to look for different shapes, a taper of a stone, a cleft, a chin, and then color issues. So this is raw material that I have all over the property. Daniel, just a quick video of a quarry that I actually get this a couple hours from me here in New Hampshire.
I'm in a quarry in Unity, New Hampshire. This is a great spot to come pick stone. Awesome color, lots of red and gold mica, feldspar, and it is very difficult now to get into quarries like this with liability issues. This is some old timer New Hampshire guy who will let you come in, come pick a pallet of rock, And then I'll go to my studio, I'll bobcat it out with my forklifts. I look for torso stones and heads, shapes that I can create heads out of. Here's one where you make a cut, chisel, and potentially a head comes out of it. A large, long torso stone, saw, and you can create the stone. They need to have some thickness to create the notch, but not too thick where they become really heavy. So this is one of my main sources right now to find stone for my sculpture.
Tom, do you
Yes.
always use stone indigenous to New Hampshire, or do you ever on your travels find some stone that interests you and bring them back to the studio and work with that?
Well, it's always, I mean, wherever I live is, or have lived, you know, it's always trying to use the stone that's local. So that was part of moving to the East Coast. Living in Boston, it was much more a darker granite studio in Rhode Island. There was a limestone quarry. There was like these white lives. There was a white stone that I was using. So yes, the thing is, you know, you fill up a truckload of stone with 50 or 60 pieces. In reality, I'm going to probably use 15 or 20 of those that actually kind of are going to work. I just go, and at this point in life, I'll just pick and grab, you know, whatever pieces that seem right. It's really a brutal day. You know, you're lifting 1,500, 2,000 pounds of stone out of a quarry, walking over rocks. So it's not an easy thing, but then it's incredibly rewarding when I know that I have a great palette of rock to work with. So it's pretty much always indigenous to the area that I'm living.
And you said that the stone you use has quartz in it and mica and iron. Is that what gives it the color, the strength? What does that do?
Yes, that's what, you know, gives it the hue, either the feldspar, the reds, the golds that are happening in the pieces. That's what's happening. And this type of color is really becoming harder and harder to find and get. So was just incredibly lucky to find this. Actually, it was on Craigslist. A guy was trying to sell his quarry, and I called him up, and he was like, sure, come on up. It's just a very unique situation. But there's been a number of areas here and over the 25 years that I've been here that I've been able to get stone out of, you know, excavators, sites, home construction. So it just depends on what's coming out of the ground. But it's really important that it's kind of more of a thinner piece instead of, often it's kind of boulderish in quarries and when they blast, and it just doesn't really work for my pieces. So we're going to go to the last space, and there's some work in here we'll start looking at. So so this is really my winter working area. I have a wood stove here. So it heats up really quickly in the winter. I do a lot of wax work, clay work in here. So this is just the final area, and a lot of pieces the pieces are really created often in this room. So been working on waxes, clays. So basically we have some bronze pieces, some large scale busts, a smaller seated figure behind. Over here, so it's like a 3/4 size, and a couple archival older piece. This is a piece from the early 2000s. It's titled Fractured, where I was taking 2 stones and opening up the torso stone, and then half glass, half stone head. So a very unique piece, and that led to these generates, where I started sawing, opening the torso stone, and then putting small figures in here. And the small figures came about from actually the birth of my son, who's holding the camera right now. So it really, the initial idea was about birth, but then also I've become to seeing about, you know, your inner self, you know, who you are inside of you, what you are. So that's how from going from 2 stones to create a space to then realizing you can open up a full stone and create this interior to put another figure in. So I've always worked on the wall, made sculptural pieces, but then always through graduate school and on, I've done wall work also. Probably 15 years ago, I was doing a lot of black and white long-term exposure photography at night of the trees and the stars. So long exposures, a minute or two exposures of the stars passing through the trees during the winter time. And in the viewfinder, you know, I started seeing my figures kind of up in the trees. Yeah, and that really led to the entwines. So cast bronze trees, elements, create the figures, and then cast all the glass leaves to them. So that then led to this like emergence piece. So this really kind of the smaller seated figure with the tree growing around it really became about my interest in bonsais. So, you know, the trees, you know, these pieces are really about, you know, family lineages and our relationship to nature. Trees provide us shelter, protection, food. So they have a number of metaphors to them to me, and, you know, our really reliance on nature and our own family lineages that kind of grow out of these, and the push and pull of human relationships where they're being pulled together or pushed apart by these branches and these trees. So bronzes, emergence, and then Sandra and Daniel have one of these pieces that are mounted on the wall that's titled Emerge. So basically a wooden form, seated figure, and the bronze tree element is growing up around it on a wall piece.
I've
I
always
also
been drawn to
make,
this.
in process, I make these Voyager pieces. Sandra and Daniel actually have one. So this is all waxwork right now. I just actually, what was in the kiln are 2 vessels that just fired out yesterday. So the vessel will be a blue glass vessel, kind of the water issue. The 2 figures coming out, and this will be filled full of crushed glass. So these ideas are like the voyage of life, and, you know, the vessel is the cauldron of that voyage, and then this relationship that you have, you know, through life with your partner.
Tom,
So,
Jonathan's really enjoying the tour. He just wants to know a little bit about the boots on the wall behind you.
the boots? Well, you know, I wear Timberlands and boots every day of my life, and so they seem to got mounted on the wall, and these are probably about 15, 20 years of boots. Actually, there's actually a really good one here. You can see I was wearing these in the summer. So I was walking down at night, and I tripped, and I tripped over a porcupine, and fortunately it didn't get my legs, but it got my shoes, so that one had to go up there also. So a large pair of you know, signature bust companions. I really don't make these pieces much anymore. I've been kind of holding them on to them because physically they're just so difficult to make. The torso stones are, you know, heavy glass cost, electric cost. So this pair is available for the tour, but really I've kind of pulled back on making a lot of large scale busts at this point in my life. So I also do these bee pieces. So actually this is actually a real beehives that are in a box. And what happened is then from this jump, I actually then started casting those hives actually in bronze. So real bronze beehives. They would get welded to the trees, and then small lampwork glass bees were added to those. Sandra has the one last piece of a beekeeper that's left out in my collection. I have 1 or 2 in my personal collection, but then that was an extension of the bronzes of beekeepers, where beehives and actual glass lampwork bees that were on these pieces then. So we're gonna then now go back into the main area, and we'll look at the work there, talk about it a little bit, and then take some questions and wrap things up.
Tom, no wonder you keep in shape. You've got a lot of walking to do, a lot of space.
So here we are back in the main room. So some more early inspirational pieces. These are some boulder heads. These are actually kind of from Massachusetts. So half glass, half stone boulder heads titled Ancestors. This is part of some of the early inspiration also. Kind of when you drive down a road in the wintertime and you have cliffs along the roadside with the melting and freezing of snow and ice or snow becomes ice. You have this layering of ice and granite was some of the early inspirations of working in glass and stone. So, you know, there's the metaphor of the blue water. The crystal is kind of ice. I see these figures rising up out of, you know, the landscape of water, oceans along the edge. So, you know, I am a sculptor. What I do is I go out and I'll find natural objects. And as Sandra said, you know, I'll bring them back to my studio, respond to the stones, and I'll manipulate them very slightly. So, you know, my hand is not really involved in the pieces, and that's very important to me. And every stone is unique, so every piece is unique. Stylistically, they're similar, but everyone has their own unique characteristics and feelings to the pieces. So the pieces are primal and enduring, but they are also timeless. If you have a timeless feel because of the stone gives it a sense of history and a timeless quality to it. But then they're very contemporary. They don't rely on a cultural identity. And the stone or the glass, especially the light coming through it, really gives it a sense of spirituality, or what I think more important is a sense of soul. So they really have a soul to them. They're contemporary, but they have a sense of history of the pieces. And then they start talking about, you know, the human dialogue, relationships, family lineages, you know, the generational issues. So this is older gold glass. This is actually the last of this color. It's a little richer gold of these golden companions. Brand new crystal that I was able to buy a couple thousand pounds of this new crystal. A grouping of our family. So we talked about a little bit of the masculine and feminine quality. I mean, I'm not saying it, but this piece definitely has to me a masculine quality, feminine. And then we have this amazing smaller piece with this black oxide running through it. Just a beautiful grouping, you know, the feel of ice, but then also the natural stone.
Gorgeous grouping.
These are actually, you know, I've always worked with a seated figure. I've been working for 30 years. So I make it from a pedestal size to these life-size pieces. These are actually my pandemic pieces. I probably started these in March, and then, you know, worked on the pair probably for 3 months, 4 months it took to finish it. When we were looking at the video of the quarry on the tailgate of my truck, I talked about a stone that could be a potential head. And this is the head that was sitting on the tailgate. And what the amazing thing was, is I found this torso stone probably like 15, 20 feet away from this head. I saw the stone, I saw the head, and just with my intuition, I knew that I was, you know, the magic of finding these stones and then having this piece come together from those.
Yeah, so beautiful pair, beautiful.
This is kind of a personal collection piece. The other pieces are available, degenerate. So another large scale degenerate with the figure in the chest, just as close to, you know, 5.5 feet tall, just incredibly difficult to make. I've been hanging on to this for a while for myself personally.
Do you get to keep much of the work? Are you able to keep much of the work?
I can't afford to keep my work. So no, I have very little work I own. So, you know, just a handful of pieces for over, you know, doing this now for 30 years. Mm-hmm. Brand new smaller pair of reflections. So, you know, this is this interpersonal relationship, this dynamic and conversation that starts happening with these pieces. And, you know, I hope the viewer kind of falls into seeing themselves in these pieces. I've had collectors tell me that, you know, when they buy their work, that they actually start having conversations with the pieces. So a pair of ocean boulders here from the east coast of ocean that came out of the ocean. And then, you know, the torso stones, great blue, so awesome pair. This is the new gold glass, the titled Auroras. The small figure is still incubating. It doesn't really have to go with it. There's very few pieces that, I sell that have to be bought as a grouping. Presently, the seated figures here and the pair in the other room, but everything can be sold separately. I understand that some people, don't have the space for a grouping. It's always great when they can go as a grouping, but that's the way things are. So this is just a beautiful, with the new gold.
Beautiful.
All the work is amazing with natural light, that what happens through it. So the reflection, the inner glow that happens, especially in this gold. A pair entitled Siblings. I do have my son, and I do have a daughter who's 26. She's in Houston. So sometimes, I just put my own background into the pieces. So nice blue, aqua color, really the blue water feel to them.
Tom, what's your daughter's first name?
That's Claire.
Claire.
She's in Houston. So, yep.
Okay.
Tom,
And then another grouping of the crystal. So crystal companions, the smaller pair, the larger pair, and again, the ice feel, just the purity of the white glass and the gold mica iron oxide. Just a very nice grouping that I really enjoy. I've made some pieces that don't have glass in them, a little bit more challenging. So this is kind of ethereal. It's a little more ghost quality to it, kind of pure. Sandra has one all in blue. It's made actually is in Australia right now. Somebody from Australia bought it. I've shipped pieces all over the world. There's pieces in Australia, India, Kingdom of Bahrain, the United Emirates, London, obviously Toronto. So as I design the work, as I say, it could go literally anywhere in the world. And then finally,
Tom?
there's this single crystal. Yes, question?
No, I was just going to say, we received an email today from a lady in India who has 2 of your pieces, but because of the time difference, could not attend and asked if we'd send the video. So you're
yes,
right. You have a following.
I think there's 2 different pairs in India, at least maybe, pair and then a grouping in India. So, which is, exciting. And, you pack it up and I have an international shipper and it gets there. And so then a final piece, a single titled Quartzite, a lot because of the head, just great form, and another crystal piece. So that's kind of who I am, my life, what I do. If there are questions, I'm happy to discuss.
What we might do, Tom, maybe before questions, Daniel has images of all these pieces. Maybe I'll let Daniel put those images up on the screen now.
Sure.
and
Okay.
Tom, before I pull up those images, Ellen would just like to know, can you describe again or show us how the pieces go together?
Sure.
Maybe just on a small.
So, as far as bust pieces, so what happens is there's a pin drilled into the head, and then the shoulders, I cast a hole in the shoulder, and then there's a hole in the bottom portion for another pin, and that fits into the torso stone. So saw out the torso stone, there's a hole in the shoulder here for the shoulder to go into. We're notched on the backside to help it hold it in. So when pieces are sold, it is good to spot silicone pieces together on the seams, and I can explain that, and if there's questions about that later. So then, it fits in tight. This piece is locked in. Shoulder, pin, goes into the hole. And then in here, smaller seated figures kind of all come apart the same. Shoulder, shoulder, pin. Legs are pinned together, so pin, hole cast, and then same torso stone goes in place. So very simple design. Everything goes together very well, and everything is secure and stable.
Mm-hmm.
like that. Large scale pieces will have a frame that actually go under them when you install them. There's a setup frame that slides underneath here. So what happens is you put the torso or the stones down, you set the torso stones on the frame, and then or the thighs on the frame, you set the torso stone in place, and then that cantilevers the piece, and you can remove this, and then you can install everything else. So with large scale pieces, you always have to have a frame to take it, put it up, and take it down, which is provided.
Very good. Thank you.
So I am going to put up some images of the work we just saw in the studio.
Excellent.
If you want to talk about any of these pieces, Tom, please do.
This is the the new crystal that I just got, crystal companions that are behind me. Great pairs, either the large scale pairs or the small pairs that work together, kind of the ice purity feel with those pieces. And our family, so that's the pieces that have the great oxide that's running through the smaller figure, the masculine, feminine, the family unit. I'm really very happy with those pieces. The golden companions, so a little bit different. This is an older glass. It's actually kind of the last of this glass and probably the last of those pieces. It's a little richer gold. Just works great with the stone. These are actually a little bit older pieces, maybe probably 4 years old, I would say at this point. I just was kind of hanging on to them because it was the last of the glass, but those are available. Single, so quartzite, really titled because of the great head and the quartz that's running through it. Siblings, so the water blue, total blue, true blue glass relationship of, a larger and smaller pair that have this dynamic. The auroras, so this is the new gold that's just amazing with light coming through it, complements the stone. I've added the third piece that isn't finished yet, but either way, it can all go together or separately. Those are about almost 3.5 feet with the scale of those pieces. The last of the large scale signature companions, I think they're like 55 inches high. Just a great pair that talk to each other, the dialogue that's happening with them, and larger freestanding pieces. The ethereal, all glass, so it's kind of I feel more of a ghosty quality. I really like the mixed media of the blue and the crystal that's happening in it, and a red glass base.
Beautiful piece.
And then the reflections, so smaller pedestal size seated figures, the dialogue that happens to them, the interpersonal relationship that's going on, the gold and the blue, the ocean stones, they feel like they're coming out of the ocean to me, actually. A smaller visionary, so this is like a 3/4 size seated figure. So I make the pedestal size, this one's at like 48 inches, so like 4 feet, I would say. A little bit more intimate, something for, maybe the space is an issue, so it's a little bit smaller seated figure. And then the major pair that are together, just a gorgeous pair that kind of have this dialogue, freestanding major pieces that are, go together. These are, at this point, I'm not selling them separately. And then this is the emergence, so seated figure with the bronze growing around it, kind of like became like interested in bonsais and thinking about trees growing around us, our relationship to nature. So it being encased by this form of a tree and kind of nurturing, protection, shelter, food, just the relationship to really nature and us as humans. And then this is the piece that Sandra and Daniel have, Emerge. So it's the wall-mounted version of the pedestal piece. It actually has a distressed wooden base, so it's sitting on a wooden base and a stone shelf that probably juts out about 10 or 12 inches, a bracket that mounts to the wall, and then the wooden base goes to the bracket, and then the piece is mounted on top of that. I really like these pieces. Vertical entwine. So this is where all that work started, where these entwines and the relationship with nature, family lineages, and you know, the beautiful gold and blue. The blue and gold I really think are very successful. And then more of a horizontal, much larger scale piece. It's probably, I say it's each 3 feet by 3 feet with the gold leaves, gold figures. Those pieces, there's just so much work in these bronze pieces. It's really just incredible amount of work and time, but it's very important for me to make these pieces to have also making the wall pieces along with the freestanding sculptures.
Thank you, Tom. You know, that was wonderful. We loved hearing about you and your work, but mainly your passion and how much emotion there is really in all of the pieces. So now I think we will let some other people ask questions. We're going to open it up, and anyone that would like to ask you something is free to do so now.
So if you would like to ask Tom a question, you can either use the Q&A or chat feature at the bottom of the screen, or you can tap on the hand and I will call on you and you can ask Tom your question directly. So Tom, Ellen would like to know, when a piece fails in the firing process, can you reuse that glass, or is it garbage?
Well, it depends on the type it is, but more often than not, once it's been compromised, I often just throw it away so it's out of my life and I don't have to think about it. I've gotten to a point where it's, you know, just one of these things, you can't do anything about it. It's incredibly aggravating, but I've learned over all these years that you just can't let it consume you and, you know, take you backwards. So usually it's better out of sight, out of mind seems what works best.
Tammy would like to know, can your work go outside, either covered or uncovered?
Yeah, unfortunately, no. With the elements of, you know, snow and ice and sun, people like to, but the glass cannot hold up to it. So unfortunately, you know, it is not recommended. If it was like in a totally covered area, I mean, a covered area would probably help, but you know, I would not suggest it. It's best. It's also what happens is that it gets very dirty. I mean, the pieces are in pristine condition when they're coming from me, and they get dirty, you know, from droppings, dirt on them, staining from the glass. So I feel that it takes away from the value also of your pieces if you're putting them outside.
We have a client in Toronto who placed an entwined in front of their house. They mounted it to the front of the house, and it's been out there for probably 15 or 20 years now. It's actually held up quite nicely.
Well, that's a little different. I mean, that's, you know, that's probably under overhang and has the bronze, and it just has, you know, a minimal amount of glass. So it's not being hit by, you know, the elements the way something else like actually out in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's exactly what it is.
And Jonathan is asking, have you ever done the pieces reversed, where you've done the heads in the torso in glass and the bases, shoulders in stone?
Not really. I mean, because, you know, everything is evolved. You know, I've actually made some torso stones that are like half glass, half stone, but to like cast out a huge torso stone, it's hard enough to cast the bases out, but then to create a huge torso stone would be really difficult and time consuming. And really, it's really, when I have done it, you know, the emotional aspect, I think, is not as prevalent with the stone not being there, and the organic quality and the sense of timelessness and history, you know, everything that the stone brings. You know, especially like in a head, you know, trying to make features in a head interesting when I have done them is very difficult. So no, it's always been, you know, everything revolves around the torso stone and creating those heads. And that's just me.
And Another question we have is, and I know we're looking at these two older pieces behind you with the blue glass and stone, but the question is, have you always done figurative work? Has that always been your focus?
Well, as I showed over here, you know, when I started in undergraduate, which these are 35 years ago, I was making figures, and the figure has always been my focus. So, you know, one aspect or another, the human figure is always involved in it. And that's because we are human and we all have the basic similar, you know, emotions, ideas, relationships that's going on. And I think we can see ourselves in a lot of my work.
That's true.
And I have a question from Aaron. Aaron is asking me, are you ever concerned that you're going to run out of stone? I mean, we saw those pictures from the quarry. It doesn't seem to be an issue, but is that anything that any challenges you've ever faced in your career where you thought that your access to the stone?
Yes, very much so. So, you know, it's like, I mean, it's also, can you actually find the stone that fits the piece? And, you know, there was a point where, you know, it was kind of hard to find a good source of stone. I found another source. He was actually talking and selling the quarry, and that might have, you know, limited people from coming in. But yes, that's there. But it's also, when you're making a piece, it's like, oh, can I really figure out and find the head that goes with this torso stone? And somehow I always do. And as I said, I think I've learned that it's almost the Zen thing where you just let go of those ideas or concerns, and you let the stone speak to you and try to bring it out, and it seems to always happen.
And Amber's asking, this is a good question, what artists, either glass artists or artists working in other materials, do you admire?
There's a sculptor called John Buck who is married to Deborah Butterfield, and he did large-scale figurative pieces and paintings. So then they would be carved wood pieces, carved wood figures that were transformed into bronze. He would have a sculptural piece in front of a painting. So he was an early inspiration, and actually it was unbelievable that a collector owned a John Buck and they bought a piece of mine. And on one side of the fireplace was the Buck and the other side was the Scoon. And I got a photograph of that, and I could not believe it. I think Ansel Kiefer is one of the best artists in the world right now. So, you know, he doesn't do figurative work, but it's about, you know, the human state and, you know, what's happened to us as humans in the world. So, but Buck is probably one of those early inspirational pieces, artists who were, you know, working with the human figure.
Great. So
As
that
far
was
as,
our
as
last
far as glass artists, I mean, I have 1 foot in the glass world, but I have 1 foot in the fine art world. You know, so, you know, I am a sculptor. These are pieces of fine art. They are sculpture, but, you know, they are also have glass as a component. I'm not really a glass artist. So, and during these times of social distancing and with the pandemic, there's been just an incredible interest and demand for my work. I think it speaks to a lot of people with what we're missing in our life right now. The human emotion, relationships with other people, dialogues, conversations. And since February, I've sold a lot of work, and I'm not sure why it is, but maybe it's what people are missing in their lives right now.
That's a question I should have asked you, Tom. How has COVID affected the work you do or the figures you're making?
Well, I mean, me personally, I mean, as far as my life, not much has changed. I mean, I've come to my house is there. I walk down to the studio. I come to the studio every day, you know, 6 days a week. I work from 9 to 6, or, you know, depending if there's a show, I'll work on weekends. This is what I do. So as far as my personal life has not changed that much. My partner has kind of moved in with me, Gussie, and she's not there right now. She's celebrating her 3rd grandchild in DC. So unfortunately, she's not
Fantastic.
here. But I continue to make my work and set it out. I mean, galleries have been closed, but for some reason, my work has been very strongly desired to, with people acquiring it.
Maybe it's the connection. When people are isolated, there's a human connection to your work.
Yeah,
And
and well,
it
and I
is
also
very-
think people can see themselves in my work also, and then their interpersonal relationship with what's going on in their life starts happening in my pieces.
Tom, thank you so much. It was really wonderful to hear you, especially about the relationship part. You work very, very hard. You create, I feel, incredibly beautiful work with meaning.
Well, thank you. You're one of the best dealers out there, and what I like to say is, you're not an art dealer, you're a friend. And with you and Daniel, it's just a great privilege to be working in one of your artists. So thank you.
We love representing you, and we're going to miss you not coming to Toronto this year. You usually come once a year up for Art Toronto.
Yeah.
So hopefully next year we'll meet face to face again.
Yes.
So stay well, enjoy your family, and congratulations, Gussie, you're out there somewhere, and look forward to seeing all of you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Tom. Bye now.